The record is starting. I generally feel that Skype's recording is better than Zoom's recording.
Yeah, I think that's
Recording
true.
makes things easier, but I think Skype's sound and everything makes things better. But I don't, I don't know. Do you enjoy watching people on like Zoom videos and stuff? Like, is that something you enjoy consuming?
Consuming.
Or watching, viewing, like, do you get enjoyment out of like people on like family squares screens?
No, I'll listen to the audio. I think the audio is great. I don't necessarily. I don't watch people like this. But it.
Yeah.
But it kind of depends. I think on the person as well. Like who I'm gonna watch. But typically no. But I mean, like typically my consuming. I don't have time to consume a lot of media. Yeah. I mean, I YouTube. I'll watch some things here and there, but like I feel bad a lot of times because like there are people that I really enjoy and people that I want to support. And I feel like, every once in a while I go, oh crap, I haven't watched one of their videos in like so long. I better go and like some stuff because they deserve it. And so I'll do that. But
I must follow through the algorithm, including this podcast. So,
but I'm really bad at that. I am.
Well, no, I mean, in my opinion, it's more a matter of this is the end result of all of this pandemic, needing to put everything on Zoom, everybody needing to throw content out there because that's the only thing we can do now.
Yeah.
Type of deal. So that's why I historically, before all this and recording Skype, then everyone was like, I don't do Skype. I deleted Skype. I'm like, but you didn't delete Skype. You just don't have it on your phone anymore. Like,
right.
You still have the account. So, yeah, I think, but that's probably done its own. So, welcome to Karate Without Belts. My name's Jon, and I am joined again after, oh God, what has this been? It hasn't been a year.
No.
But it feels like it's been a year. The last time we did anything was a debate with Sal, or not a debate. That didn't turn into a debate. But anyway, I introduced the illustrious Dan Bernardo.
Woohoo.
How the hell are you doing, my friend?
We are okay. We are alive. We are breathing. We are drinking tea, and it is. I had to do tea today because we're talking about a kung fu movie, so I had to do kung fu tea. So we're drinking oolong right now, and it's the best.
I got like convenience store thing, like carton orange juice that I got last night because I had to drive home late.
Kung fu orange juice.
This is orange juice.
Sure, why not?
I don't have to be on brand.
Come on, Jon.
We just got done with the 2-minute intro on just like how we were not really into this whole like watching people in like squares thing. That's why this is an audio programming, and like always will be.
Yeah.
How's training been with you recently?
Training's actually been pretty good.
I enjoyed. I wanted to look at your thing about the universality of martial arts, and that other righteous dude you had doing that commercial. I was genuinely like, that's some good stuff right there. That's like a good like commercial for a seminar, like more people should do.
And that 100%, that was all Keith. His name is Keith Mosier, and he's awesome. He's been doing Wing Chun for years and years and years and years. He's such a cool dude. But that was all him. Like he was like, I was like, we need to film something to just put out there, right? Like I'm the kind of guy who's like, I just want to film something and put it out there. I don't care if it's perfect. I don't care if it's polished. Like I don't care. Get it out there. The more you can get it in people's faces, the better. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I was like, let's just film something. And he goes, okay, just follow my lead. And I was like, okay. And he said, stand right there. And then just look off in the distance. And I was like, okay. So he just came out. It really only took a couple takes, because I was an idiot and was like, blah, 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 blah. Like, I don't even know what to say. But then once we kind of figured it out, yeah, that was all him. And so, yeah.
Most enjoyable piece of martial arts content I've seen in a long time.
Yes.
We keep on referencing that today. But how's the school going? Looks like you guys are going pretty strong. I saw your thing of like how old's that kid who was like just like doing tumbles on a folded up mat? And I was like,
yeah, he's like, well, what is he now? 8, 9, and he really, really have been focusing a lot on rolls, and he's come a long. He's come a long way. The kid, from being scared to get his head anywhere near the mat to just, fearlessly diving over the stick. And I was like, we need to record this. He was cool. Yeah.
Dan, if you are in the South Carolina area, the mid South Carolina area where there are no mountains, unlike horrible other states that me and Dan happen to be from, really just need to check out his school. That he's authentically. I'm gonna always glow you up every time I have you on, buddy. He's authentically like a great school, great programming, cares about what his students are doing, is involved, unlike a lot of places, I think historically have been. Go check out that. There's multiple names for it, so I want to get this right. So, well within martial arts.
That's my dojo. Yes, sir.
All right.
Columbia, South Carolina. If you want to come and visit, you are more.
Yes. So get out there. Everybody get out on that bus. And go to that.
Yeah, and talking about that workshop, if I can. So the first weekend in November 4th, 5th, and 6th, Keith and I are going to be looking at some universal principles. We're going to look at trapping, controlling, takedowns, and basically kind of like looking at where it exists in Tang Soo Do curriculum, so my style, where it exists in Wing Chun, his style, and then just kind of like overlapping it and learning these principles from a Tang Soo Do perspective and learning it from a Wing Chun perspective and realizing how really they're all the same. So that's kind of the goal of the weekend, but it's going to be a lot of fun. Really is. Where I think I'm mostly going to be looking at Pasai and Naihanchi from a karate standpoint, so from a Tang Soo Do standpoint. So I'm going to be looking at trapping, controlling, and takedowns from those two forms and taking those principles and showing where they exist in Wing Chun. And I may throw in some Taiji Chuan and some sword work in there as well because, again, it's all the same. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Sword and Nahachi? Come now.
Dude, so where things start to get different is when the weapon becomes long, right? So like when you have a sword, then the principles start to change because the sword weapon decides how your body moves, not the other way around. But which is, we may have talked about this before. I despise when people just put a weapon in their hand and start doing empty-handed movements. Like it doesn't work that way. So there are some different principles, but mostly in regards to structure and measure and that. But there's a lot of similar stuff. There's a lot of controlling and trapping and controlling and takedowns with a sword. Even if you look at like Fiore's work in the 1400s, like his close plays they're just grappling. With a sword or with a dagger or with whatever. So like it's all the same stuff.
Cool, buddy. That if I could had thousands of dollars and can jump on a plane, I would go.
I would love it. I would love for you to be here. It'd be so much fun.
As I told another friend of ours, who was now that Japan, Kishida, not a big fan of the guy, but he was just like 2 days ago was like, yeah, we'll just open up on October 11th. And this is just after 3 years of being like, we'll have this border control and only people in certain, we're gonna have a cap of and then like recently it was like, you can only come on a package tour, and like they just got a bunch of like, I don't know, fake tourists for like publicity's sake, and then they all got coronavirus. And, and just the guy was like, yeah, we won the election, sure, why not? We the yen is pretty bad right now. Let's let these foreigners in here, get the economy rolling again.
That works.
Yeah, this is economic talk on Karate Without Belts. Yeah, as I told James though, yeah, I'm just gonna be like heckler in chief. Like that's all I would add to it. That's all I add to seminars, really. I'm a pretty good guy. You can hit in the face, so you can take a punch pretty well.
There needs to be that guy all the time.
I guess I am that guy. I guess. Yeah, this week in training has been managing minor injuries, and just unfortunately, last week I had an intentional week off of training. This week was an unintentional week off of training. Mostly. But I'm the arch rival of the podcast, I suppose, is the comma, and slowly and surely we are becoming frenemies. A little bit of that, but I'm just going to leave that right there. Dan, we're here to actually, speaking of consumption of media, to talk about a little-known movie that you and I both share a love of, and had hit the Netflix about a year ago.
Yeah.
And we were like, we need to do something on this. And then it's almost a year later, and it's like, we still haven't done anything on this. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's I guess fairly well known now, which is good. It deserves it. I think, in my opinion, it's probably one of, or if not the best martial arts film to come out in the last decade. I think it's phenomenal. Not only is it a good martial arts movie, but I think it's just a good movie, just in general. It was written well, it was acted well. It touches on a lot of things that go beyond martial arts, but the martial arts theme, I think, is deep, and I every time I watch it, it makes me want to be a better martial artist.
And it definitely, sorry, didn't want to cut you off.
Go ahead.
I mean, so this is, and I have to draw the direct comparison here. I've said before on this program that like Karate Kid, or not Karate Kid, Cobra Kai is like the Spinal Tap of karate. And I think this movie actually takes that title away from it, in my opinion, because or does it much better in a shorter amount of time without wasting everyone's time and doing callbacks. Because this is an original thing. To give it some background, apparently this had been, they attempted to shop this around to Hollywood, and basically Hollywood said, this is dumb. Let's put Bruce Willis in it. Which, if you've seen anything about like what they've done to Bruce Willis in the last 5 years, and this is not talking about his like recent retirement due to illness.
Yeah.
It's just like him like essentially cashing in. Oh, and then they also were like, let's try to put Nick Cage in this. Which I'm like, Nick Cage in this would have been awesome. That would have been pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
But the fact they had to like go. What?
He did jujitsu instead.
That is true. Which is, I haven't seen that one yet. I want to.
I haven't either. Okay, so I started watching it, and I just couldn't. Like, there's that point where you just go, I can't take you seriously.
Okay.
You know, like, so apparently the film is serious, or somewhat serious, and I couldn't. So I have no clue how good it is, because I couldn't even watch it. So maybe I will attempt in the future.
Maybe. I mean, it's I get you there. I feel you there. There's some things that are just go that aren't worth our time, but this is definitely was, and it was. I think it was just on a very, very small shoestring budget. Overall production value is not very high in this film. It is a very low budget, low to the ground type of film. But I don't know. Should we walk through the plot a little and then kind of talk about some themes that kind of stick out?
Yeah, we can. Have we said what the title?
Oh yeah, no, we have. See, this is why.
Guess. Guess what
yeah.
Guess what we're talking.
So what movie are we talking about?
Gosh, it's funny because when I first saw that it came on Netflix and I saw the title, I thought to myself, this is going to be interesting because this concept of paper tigers is such a unique concept, I think, within martial arts, where people give themselves rank or they give themselves titles, but they don't live up to them, or they don't actually embody them, or they don't train, or they don't whatever. And so they're paper tigers. Oddly enough, that theme does not really exist in the movie.
But it's present.
It's
the whole time. It's present the whole time.
But it's not like this is how should I say? It's not an outright, blatant, in your face, this is a problem in the martial arts community.
No, not as such.
It's more of a subtle, this is what happens in the martial arts.
And so in the movie, we've got, I guess it starts in like every martial arts movie apparently does, but quickly gets out of the 1980s. It starts in the 1980s with our three characters, Danny, Singh, and Jim. And they're not they're in a kung fu, they're not even in a kung fu school. They're being trained by one guy, Sifu Shung, who's played by Roger Yun, who has a lot of credits to his name. He was in Batman Begins, he was in Dune, he was in like all of this stuff, but like very much on the side. Mm-hmm. But it's lampshaded by his death. But then it starts with like him training these three paper tigers, and attempting to show them a better way. But quickly gets out of the 80s and into the 90s, which I was like pumping my fists the entire time, being like, yes, finally, we're not doing this. But it showed what was interesting, and what I loved about it is it showed, no, this is not dojo culture. This is not dojo culture. This is not running a school culture. This is not nonsense like that. This is what Karate Kid failed to do, was show backyard, garage, street training. Mm-hmm. Personal,
good training, good kung fu training. I don't want to say the way it should be. That's not really the right way to put it, but a more almost more raw, more familial type of training that not like, down here in the South, we're surrounded by people who trained in their backyard with some guy, and it's not some guy worth training with, right? But this movie, Sifu Chung is somebody worth training with, That I think is a big, awesome theme. One of my favorite parts of it.
Oh, well, I mean, and the thing with that is like it shows, oh wait, we don't need to rent a large space and spend lots of money and do all this other stuff. You just do it in the backyard and you do it correctly. You don't need all of that stuff. Right. It shows the bare minimalism of martial arts. It shows the bare minimalism of getting through. Right. And so we have this like kind of lampshade into the 90s. These kids do a lot of dojo. I like how they said like dojo busting or later on. And I was like, do you have any memories of this happening?
Yes.
I kind of have some memories of this happening, but do you have any memories of this happening?
Yes, actually. And I want to say that that I wasn't involved in some of it, but I was only involved once in a sort of dojo busting thing, but it was only at a demo, and so I think I was probably, I don't know, 16, 17 maybe, and I was at Kennywood. It might have been Kennywood. And so they had a big demo, and there was a karate school there, and they were breaking boards, whatever. And they started doing like self-defense or whatever, and they asked people to come up and like, grab them or whatever. Grabbed one of them, and but that's it. Like that's the only really thing that I've ever done. And
you weren't going in with a camcorder and
no, none of that. None of that.
People in their own dojos and stuff.
I think that was probably maybe a bit dramatic, but
yeah, I feel what you described is a little more like that. I've seen instances of people walking into schools, becoming students, and then doing stuff like that. Yeah. Joining classes and doing stuff like that. But it's like I was Leo DiCaprio meme whiskey with cigarette pointing at the screen going, yes, this happened. This is not Netflix crap. I mean, it's on Netflix, but this is the direct. I don't want to keep on comparing, but it's like directly opposed to like essentially what like this nonsense Cobra Kai is doing. Where it's like completely unrealistic and it's like it's a cartoon. Mm-hmm. This is not a I mean, it's kind of a comedy to a degree, but it's legit. What was happening? So
yeah, there is parts of it that are comedic, but then it really does have a lot of serious themes. That make you go, what is really important in regards to martial arts? What is really important? Where I think Cobra Kai goes, who gives a crap what's important? Let's just do what is the most stupid and most dramatic. The whole storyline of Danny Eight Hands, being invited to go to Japan and be a professional fighter, and his teacher kind of just, almost disowning them at that point. That I think is a little dramatic, but there's a lot of truth to that.
And there's instances I've seen of, or I've heard of things not that, but things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Where there's somebody who's very set in their ways, or like, no, you're not doing this, and essentially ending 10, 15-year relationships with people who they've taught for a long time. Yeah, I agree with you. It is very true. It's like, why are they going to Japan? I guess it's like a far away place that seems legit to do professional fighting in the 90s.
I mean, when did the K1 fights start in was it in the 90s? I don't remember. Gosh, I don't remember. But
I feel that is a bit of fiction they threw in there to kind of make it.
Yeah.
To make it, in my opinion, I don't quite get why they're talking about Japan in that regard. That might be my ignorance, right? I'm not entirely.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure either. But when you think about a classical martial arts instructor who doesn't want you to fight for money, doesn't want you to fight for glory, doesn't want you to just be a fighter, right? Like even my lineage, like the whole idea is if you actively seek out fighting, even if it's sensual fighting in sport combat, like you are now a fighter, not a martial artist. That kind of idea is present in that film, because a martial artist should protect others rather than hurt others. That to me was had a deep meaning for me.
Well, what's funny is that they kept that at the very beginning of the film. He basically says, "Don't do that," and then we see throughout their youth that's all they were doing.
Right.
And so, I mean, like, all right, you didn't stop this before, but now he's doing it professionally. I mean, it is kind of on you, homeboy. Like you, like,
Did he
like you
not
can't get,
know?
like you didn't know.
Right. Right.
So, yeah, there's that. So, but we're not really revealed that part right away. So the film flash forwards, I think it's like 25, 30 years from that like mid 90s point where they're like, yeah, we're gonna go to Japan too. Like it's like I guess 2020, 2018, whenever this was made, and Danny's now older and we have to kind of comment on older Danny, like main cast Danny versus teen Danny. They don't look. This the only weakness in the film is they don't look anything alike.
They don't. Hing looks similar to his
Yeah.
younger self, but Jim not at all, and Danny not at all.
So I mean, that I think they went actor over appearance here, and I think that worked. That worked.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
some people want to go continuity and whatnot. They made what is it? What's his name? The guy from Third Rock from the Sun try to look like Bruce Willis in that one movie. If they can do that, they can. We can like we can live with this. But they got the best actor. I think.
Well, the guy who played the guy who played Danny, this was his idea, wasn't it? Like this whole film was his.
It's one of well, no, not quite, but he was one of the main people behind it. Same thing with Yuji Okamoto, who like is a producer on the film. Alien Yu looks like he only has a starring credit. And the other guy who was doing this was Tran Kwok Mao, which I'm not sure what his other credits are, but he very much was like written and directed by, which is where you get like the voice of the movie, which is good because it didn't get swallowed up by anything.
Yeah.
It stayed on task. So we switch. I guess we can get into the meat of it, but it's like we get 25 years later, and everybody's like a crappier version of themselves.
Might have been 15. Might have been 15 years. Because there was one moment where I think there's first time they all three get together and they're sitting there drinking and Jim's pissed off, right? And Hing says something like, I just want you to know, 15 years, none of you reached out to me. But I think it might, well, anyway, I think it might be.
Yeah. I mean, it's from the 1993 to like, this is the other kind of small weakness of the film where it was like, wait, they didn't talk to each other in that entire amount of time? Like, Hing just kind of shows up out of nowhere and like starts the plot, which is fine. Like, it's what they went with. I think that's fine. But it is just more like, it's 2020, it's 2019, 2020, and he couldn't email or call or like, it's very much like kind of more like early 2000s mindset with communication rather than like 2018 mindset.
I mean, I can tell you that there are people that, you know, some people in my previous martial arts school that I haven't talked to in about the same amount of time, a lot of different reasons, but you know, I think people have that experience with family members as well.
Whereas only
family members.
If you physically go up to them is about the only amount of time. That's true, but I mean the thing is like there's only I only say it mention it as like a slight weakness.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a complete like flaw or like plot hole or anything. It's nothing like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, they get to the present. We get to the present. Danny's a bad dad. He's just a bad dad. Like he's a bad dad throughout the entire film. He's just, again, not a writing. It's like writing weakness, not writing bad. Just slight writing weakness. Why is your custody agreement in a park? Like, that's the only thing. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it might have just been that weekend. That's where they decided to do the swap. Who knows? But yeah.
How is it 50-50? As if it's only on the weekend? All right, I guess. Yeah. You live in the same neighborhood. Like, come on. Like,
oh, do they live in the same neighborhood? I didn't get that.
Apparently, like time is warped and space is bendable in a lot of this. That's fine. Again, not what the movie is about. I feel like I'm picking on it, but I really shouldn't. So anyway, he's picking up his kid from his ex-wife, and then suddenly we find out that their master died, and basically derails everything. Basically he drops off his kid in the worst way possible.
Yeah.
And forces him to lie. They go to the funeral, and the noted martial arts YouTubers, the Martial Club, show up. Which, I mean, if you know them, they do kind of stick out, but they do a really good job of being like, yeah, we're the young guys. Him and Hing are there, and then we also get introduced to Mr. Bullshit himself, Matthew Page.
Yes.
Which I did not realize who he was. I guess the mustache did it all, man. Like,
wow. And people wonder why people can't recognize Superman. See, you can't recognize Matt Page with that. It's a thing. It's a thing. Man, did he do amazing in this film? And in so many ways, like, his character is real.
Yeah.
That is a real person.
Yep.
More than people would want to admit, that he is a more real character than so many other characters in this film.
Yeah, and like, and this is why I say this takes the cake in terms of the Spinal Tap comparison, because he is white guy trying to compare himself to a culture he doesn't understand. He is guy who stuck around, right? Because there is that as well. Because we get the three tigers, and they're all not doing kung fu 25 years later, but they're also the quote unquote inheritors. And they're all like, they comment on that Danny just looks like he like lost all his muscle mass. Right. They comment on things basically like fat guy. And they on Jim is just gave up. I like how he's just like, I forgot.
Yeah.
I do really like that. And there's people like that who did martial arts for God knows how long, and then they just up and forgot it all.
Right. Well, so he went and got a BJJ black belt, so he's now a BJJ guy, obsessed with, that, and then just forgot his kung fu. And, that is that point where you're right, that point where he's like, I forgot to salute. I don't remember what to do. And he's just like, screw it. And then just goes in like that's it's so good.
I do like, and then after the funeral, they try to go after the Martial Club, and then Danny gets his butt kicked. Hing apparently owns his own, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Fat boy pride. And then also
he's a cripple.
We don't use that word anymore.
He's injured.
He's less able than others.
Consecutively.
All right.
He's permanently injured.
Yeah. It's not really. Yeah, it's not really implied like what the issue is, other than his like just foot's messed up and he gets money forever.
He fell off scaffolding and messed his knee up. And so now he collects a paycheck every month. I think that's kind of the way that he explains it, or something like that.
And yet this doesn't stop him like several times in the film being like, yeah, I'll show you how to do a kick. Oh God, my knee. Yeah, I'll kick you. Oh God, my knee. And it is just constantly forgetting that you're injured, which again is something. Yes.
Yeah.
How many people we know? Many people we know collectively?
Yeah. I do it. When my back is out, I'm like, well, let me show you. No, not a good idea, Dan. Not a good idea.
No. Unfortunately, we get a bit of racism in the middle here, but I mean, I think it's fairly well. I don't want to say racism well played, but it was like basically like, yeah, that's why you don't use that word.
Yeah.
And it doesn't linger on it. It doesn't go way too much.
No, and they do it well, I think, or they resolve it well anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it turns out that the quote-unquote Kung Fu orphans, which, by the way, we have to mention this is all taking place in, like, an empty pool. Yeah, that's pretty good in terms of, like, wait, where is this place? It's an abandoned pool?
Yeah, maybe like an abandoned school or an abandoned YMCA or something that, and they've got this like big makeshift does it say like Wuguan or
Yeah, Martial Club, because I mean that is their thing.
right.
Legitimately it is their thing and it's what they use. So I think,
Which I think is awesome too. Like, so if you don't know who they are, they basically became famous on YouTube.
Yep.
And now they're in films all over. Like that to me is
Yeah.
awesome. And
Yeah.
is the epitome of the young guys now who YouTube stars. Like I think that social media stars.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, was they're in Everything Everywhere All at Once, and then they're also in. I think they're in Shang-Chi.
Yeah. Well, at least I know a couple of them are.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that whole crew, but that whole crew is like legitimately really good at martial arts. Legitimate, like where kids today would be.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so they figure out like, okay, so they don't know anything about the death of their master. And they go back to Master Ken, who does a really good like comedic job, takes them all on, beats them all. And because we see this lampshade, we see this like in parallel to him as a kid constantly getting his ass kicked by Danny.
Constantly. Yeah.
And then just the like taunting and rivalry between them, and then essentially he's the one who gives the game away that, oh no, there was a fourth student, legitimate student.
Yeah.
So they have to get, and I feel this is possibly the more contrived part of the film, but I mean, it's pretty all right. So where do they go to next?
The dungeon.
The dungeon, which is, I don't know, that's implying other things. And
yeah. So I think that the dungeon concept and it being, a place for like a mob front. Who knows, right? But there's this part of the film has one of my favorite scenes. So we hear earlier we talked about Hing kicking a bag and hurting his knee. The reason that he did it was because he talked about the way that a kick sounded. It hit the bag. So you have this almost ethereal idea that a good kick makes a unique sound. And they go down into the dungeon and they're like, there's tons and tons of people and they're trying to find this one guy. And Hing goes, I need to listen for the sound. I'm like, that's all that matters, because only he who trained with Sifu Chung, only he would be able to kick or hit the bag correctly. Like that's the implications, right? And so they're walking around and Hing is like listening to people, and then all of a sudden you kind of the this audio goes kind of, that word for that, like blank,
muffled.
almost muffled.
Oh
Yeah.
not muffled,
Then,
but like, yeah, like everything silences, and then he kind of hones in on.
right. And so like you've got
And
Hing and Jim here, and then he's starting to hear the sound, and the sound is starting to get louder and louder and louder, and then Danny walks into the middle of the scope, of the middle of the frame, and you can see him start to turn his head, like they all hear it at the same time. Oh, like it gives me chills. It is such a cool, I mean, it's an amazing scene. I love it.
and it's not crap. Like it's not made up nonsense either. Like between that and the whole breathing thing that Danny talks about, I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
because I felt that.
Yeah.
I've had those experiences too, where it's like you can't really explain it. It's kind of what your training does to you, and it's also one of those things that like you forget. It's the quickest. It's not the quickest thing you learn, but it's the quickest thing you forget.
Mm. Yeah.
And
Yeah. I'm with you there.
because it's like if you're like kind of in tune, right? You're in what scientists I guess call flow state.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that is, right?
Right. You get it in running. get it in sports, you get it in martial arts. Like it's not a, how should I say? I mean, it's not a spiritual thing that you like. It's just it's a physiological change, and it's real. And my favorite thing about it too is, and we can get back to this at the end, but he goes in and out of it. Like they treat it really realistically, because it's not something that you can sustain, or how should I say, if you're just kind of learning it, or just kind of remembering it. In this case, you're coming back to it. In the case of Danny in this film, it goes in and out, and he doesn't become some magic martial artist. It's a real. They did it really well.
Yeah. And so it's like they find out who the guy is, and then they bring in the most controversial topic, the poison finger technique, which I don't know. How do you feel about this? Do you feel this is appropriately used, or do you feel this was kind of like a bit of a more of a, this is a martial arts thing people will kind of know and understand, so we can throw it in there to.
I think it was a writing point. I think it was, the one thing that I think this film does well is it does balance seriousness with funny and comedy. And I think this is one of those things where it's right in between. Like there's a seriousness to this, but I don't think that Poison Fingers is a real thing in the film. I think that Poison Fingers is a representation, or could be seen as a representation, of the usage of martial arts personal gain, or usage of martial arts for bad. Right? So we get this like juxtaposition of Danny earlier, who wanted to fight and use his fighting for glory, and the instructor didn't want to do that. And then we see Jim and Hing talking about Poison Fingers while they're eating bacon and eggs, and and they both basically said that you have to they what do you call quoted Master Chung as saying you have to train for 20 more years. And so there's this like real seriousness to it, to this idea that there are dangerous things that we train in martial arts. There are very dangerous techniques that we learn, and we have to be very careful. We teach those techniques too, right? There's a lot of gatekeeping involved in regards to that, specifically in old classical systems, the old Koryu systems, the old Kung Fu systems. Even in my system, really, there's some gatekeeping to what we teach. So we don't teach beginners. We don't teach people. I don't teach really dangerous things to people who have only been training for 5 years. Like I need to know them. I need to know them well before I can teach them things that I consider dangerous. Now, there's an old, I'm trying to remember the text. There's an old Chinese, actually, I think it's a Taiji Chuan text, but it talks about using pressure points for, to hurt the other person. So to use almost like there's acupressure for healing, and there's acupressure for hurting. And so it actually takes a section of the manual and lists the kinds of people to not teach. Like this was a real concern, and so this idea in this film is not, it's not incredibly fictitious. It might have used this idea of Poison Fingers to draw this parallel, and so Poison Fingers in itself might be a little dramatic and over the top.
The Dimmock, Kyusho, Death Touch,
there's something to that, right? And it might just be something that's a little bit more philosophical, something you just really have to kind of think about. But I think that they used it, and again, this is just my personal opinion and how I received that. But that is how I received it. Like we're looking at Danny, who was the inheritor, but ended up not being the best inheritor because he wasn't really a good person. He's a horrible dad. Like we see that he's a very good person. And then now we have this juxtaposition, this younger guy who is an even worse person. And so now Danny rises and has to become who
better.
Sifu Chung probably wanted him to be in the first place.
Yeah, which it kind of brings us, I guess we can kind of like get to where that guy goes to. So they try to confront him in Yuji Okamoto's business or place of business, I guess, because he does in real life he is a restaurateur. Interestingly enough, so
really?
okay,
I didn't know that.
Yes, he runs a restaurant.
That's
he did movies and he's like, I'm gonna just move to Seattle with my wife and have a restaurant.
I love that. Does this take place in Seattle?
No, it does. Well,
San Francisco.
Some random. I'm gonna assume it's somewhere like San Francisco
or
like LA.
Sign about like the Chinese Cultural Center, and I think it says the city, but I don't remember.
I don't think it's anywhere specific because I think it's since it's so low budget, they can't really say where, like, because there's like budgetary concerns with literally being able to say where something is. So I think it's like ambiguous West Coast city.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, there's that. But anyway, they find this guy. They're like, oh God, we can't fight him. And he's like, no, we're gonna Baymo or whatever. And they're like, Danny's like walks away from it, and then Hing tries to go fight him. Then he gets thrown back in Master Ken's dojo. And he's like, oh crap, we gotta
all destroyed, just
completely wrecked.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Danny finally decides, all right, time to man up. I do like that end fight. It is a bit. It kind of goes in and out between the comedy and the coaching and stuff like that. A little bit, but I think it works fairly well. I do like how Danny is just like, God, I can't do this. Oh God. My lungs are burning.
There's some reality there. The fight, I think that the fight between them and the young kids in the pool was less realistic than the end fight. I think the end fight was, I think it was really well done. He hit him, I don't know how many times. But, he was only bleeding a little bit. Like, you could tell, like, that he wasn't, and then you could tell that he was hurt. I think that it felt like this is something that could actually happen. Would they really throw each other off the roof at the end if they done? Like, I don't,
no.
That was kind of weird. But I like the last fight. I did.
And it was, and like, we don't want to like over spoil everything in the movie, but they do end on like a very good note of like how everyone's like working at the community or helping out with the community center now. Jim's teaching BJJ, Hing's doing the like Chinese medicine.
Yeah.
And they all meet in Yuji Okamoto's restaurant again at the end. He says, "Oh, everything's on me, guys." The last shot was the most beautiful part in relation to his son. And just passing that on, in my opinion. I do like the very ending shot of like, because it begins and ends the same way, right? It begins with like them training and like the master, and then it ends with him finally kind of being at peace where he should be.
Yeah. In the same pose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Such a good movie.
So anything I missed or any final thoughts you want to kind of add on here, Dan?
My biggest takeaway from this film, I talked about earlier that it makes me want to be a better martial artist. Theme is family, above all. Martial arts family. And it really gives you a contrast to so many martial arts schools that are not that. And I don't want to say that, what the film is showing is better than the dojo or the dojang or the guan that you're training in. But it's a good reminder for me that martial arts is about people. Martial arts training is about people. It's about becoming a better person. It's about helping other people become better persons. And it's really just by doing simple things over again. We talk about, this term kung fu, and it really just that means is a skill that you have acquired through hard work. And how important that is to share that with other people, to me, makes that film beautiful.
I mean, I can echo that. Even though I kind of pointed out some of the flaws of it, it's just like when you watch this, like it does really hit you, like in terms of like if you've trained for any amount of time, and the older you get, I think the more this hits you.
Sure.
The more time you've spent on something, 20 years, 30 years, the more it hits you.
Sure.
And that for me is it's exactly what you said. It's about the people you train with, and if you're not, it makes it harder and harder for you and as time goes on, it's harder and harder to make those reconnections, or it's harder and harder to make those connections. It just reminds you how like special those connections you had when you like either initially trained or you had that kind of initial experience in your life. And it represents it in a really great way. So yeah, we guess this gets our ringing endorsement and just getting people to actually jump on and look at it, as opposed to like the other stuff that's supposedly representing martial arts today, which it's my opinion really not doing the job it should be.
I agree with you.
Well, cool, man. So what's going on with you with training for the rest of the week?
Well, for me, the week is over, but
or I guess in the week coming in.
The week coming, what's happening? Same old, man. I've started to try to grow my youth program, just seeing how that's going to grow. I started a youth weapons program, or youth weapons class, which is fun. I'm starting to teach some Italian stick work to kids. That's a lot of fun. Speaking of like familial lines, right? So like teaching what my grandfather taught me when I was a kid to other kids it's kind of cool. But yeah, beyond that, I mean, got some testing coming up, so we're preparing for some testing for some colored belts. I've got some black belt testing coming up soon, and then weekend of October 8th, my student and I are driving up to Connecticut for a tournament. So that's going to be a fun drive. But
that's a drive from where you are, buddy.
Yeah, it'll be around 14 hours, I'm sure, something like that. I've done it before. So I like driving, so it's not that big of a deal. But I will be driving through the north, which is, not always very fun. But mostly because of tolls.
Yeah, they're never fun, especially when you got to deal with it on a regular basis.
That's fun. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. But really, nothing too crazy. How about yourself?
Just what I'm doing this week is I've got a basic idea in my head where I'm gonna front load the week with training, and then kind of let the kind of latter end of the week be more kind of rest rather than trying to spread it out, and then try to do kind of the big stuff in terms of, because I've got a half marathon in November I'm going to be participating in, which is like the first time to do this in like over 2 years.
Cool.
Yeah, and like the one I was preparing for 2 years ago got canned. So yeah, it's actually a real first time doing this in I think 6 years actually.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I'm just kind of trying to prep for that, but also thinking of like ways to essentially make karate because you do 2 hours of running, it's one thing, but you're doing 2 hours of karate, it's kind of a different workout. Unfortunately, I live somewhere where once December hits, you're not going to be able to do 2 hours of running unless you're on a treadmill, and everyone hates treadmills. Like, so yeah, it's just one of them things. So just figuring that out. But also, our friend Sal will be happy. I have Bob the
I
Mace
was
back
gonna
there.
say something. I
Yep,
noticed you got a mace back there. That's
I do.
exciting.
You can also see my trash can and my broom and a box where the mace came from and some laundry. This is again why this isn't visual. But yeah, the I'm trying to just figure out how the best you like start out with the mace, try to make sure let my shoulder rest up this week, and then I can jump on the mace again next week, so I don't end up injuring myself even further.
Yeah.
Train smart, not hard.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. Well, Dan, I want to thank you for coming on, man. Like this has been way, way too long since we've done this, and hopefully we can do this a little more in the next couple coming months and whatnot. Yeah, and yeah, I'm glad we finally got to do this. So,
yeah, me too. Glad to hear your voice, see your face.
Somebody has to, but hey, yours is much more handsome and easy to take in than mine. So
not true. It's just the beard. It's a facade. That's all it is.
I can't have one until I leave my current job. So I have to kind of continue to go beardless. But I've left the beard behind in a lot of ways. So it's all right.
Yeah, it's all good.
Cool, man. Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you everybody for listening. And just remember, everybody, keep on training.